What's up, everybody? I want to talk to you today about a big mistake that speakers make. And that big mistake is too many topics. Yep, that's right. Speakers that have too many topics. And this came up because I was in one of my many Facebook groups. Y'all know a bunch of Facebook groups, but I was in a Facebook group and I was reading some comments. People were talking about topics, and somebody said that one of the things that they said was that when um, when they reach out to somebody to speak or somebody reaches out to them, they basically say, well, what do you want me to talk about? I could talk about anything. And so they have like a list of topics that they can talk about. When you have too many topics, though, as a speaker, that's a problem. And I'm going to tell you this from personal experience. So, for those of you who don't know me, I am Kelly Charles Collins. I am a keynote and award winning TEDx speaker. I'm a retired law firm partner and trial attorney, a speaker mentor, a brand strategist, an author, a magazine publisher, and a podcast host. And I started out as a professional speaker. I'll say, quote unquote, a professional speaker in 2020 after having practiced law for 24 years, right? And the reason I make that distinction is because as a lawyer, as a trial lawyer, I spoke every single day, right? I spoke to my clients, I would teach, I would train clients, and I would also speak to juries. So I was already a professional speaker. I just was being paid as a lawyer, not being paid as just a speaker. But I can tell you that one of the things that happened to me when I made the transition, hey, Odell, one of the things that happened to me when I was making the transition from practicing trial lawyer to speaker was, what the heck am I going to talk about? Right? Because I had been an employment lawyer for 20 something years. So I tried cases that involved harassment, discrimination, workplace violence, anything to do with employer employee relationships, right? Wage and hour issues, whatever it is in that realm, I could talk about, right? So when I joined Hey IG, when I joined the National Speakers Association, because that's one of the things that I did when I started speaking, I was like, oh, I need to go figure out the business of speaking, right? I already knew how to speak. I just needed to understand the business of speaking. And we would have our monthly meetings. And after our monthly meetings, everyone would go around, talk to each other, shake hands. And people would always ask me, so what do you speak about? Right? Hey, Sandy, like, what do you speak about? And I was like, hmm, I don't know. Well, I could speak about blah, and I would like list a whole bunch of things. And I was like, yeah, that doesn't seem right because everybody that I'm talking to, when I asked them, well, what do you speak about? They were able to tell me, like one topic, like a couple of topics, right? And so for a couple of months, that was really frustrating to me because I was like, I know that I'm brilliant at a lot of things. I know that I know a lot of things, but I wasn't sure what it is that I wanted to speak about as a professional speaker, right? And some of you all may be having that same issue, especially people who are high achievers, who've done a lot, who've maybe been in the corporate arena for a long time, have gone up through the ranks. When you know a lot of things, it's hard to kind of narrow it down to like, what the heck am I supposed to speak about? And so that was a real challenge that I had in the beginning. And so I hired a coach because I wanted help with figuring out, like, the whole landscape of this. Like, I had NSA, right, as the association, but I wanted my own coach to help me to figure out like the business of speaking and what I needed to be doing. So I sought out someone who was already way ahead, right, who was doing what I wanted to do and had done some of the things already that I want to do. And so I started talking to her about, my topics and what can I speak about and what is my expertise and what is my background and all the things. And so finally, we started talking about a bunch of things. And I decided, listen to this, y'all. I decided that I was going to speak about 9 things. 9. My first, I wish I had taken a screenshot of it. Like my first website, which was really a landing page, I had the topics, like, right, the topics that I was going to talk about. It was 9 topics that I put out there. 9. And so when she was looking at it, she was like, Kelly, are you sure about this? And I was like, yeah, I can talk about all these things. I have the expertise to talk about all these things. So yeah, no problem. What I didn't realize is a couple things. I didn't realize, one, how much work it would have been to say that I have 9 topics, right? To speak on 9 topics. That means I have to create 9 presentations, right? I have to create 9 presentations for these 9 topics that I want to speak about, right? Or train people on. That was one thing. 2, I was like, I didn't realize at that time, when people call you and they ask you, right, or they reach out to speak, that and they want you to speak, and now you're like listing this whole menu. It's like the Cheesecake Factory menu. Like, there's so much stuff in that Cheesecake Factory menu. Y'all probably eat the same 1, 2, or 3 things, right? And so, she started talking to me about, like, Kelly, this is just too many topics. Then I'm thinking, but I don't know how to narrow this down. I don't even know where to begin. These are the things that I can talk about. I don't even know how to focus in. And the third thing that I didn't realize was, if I focused in, it would be so much easier for other people to reach out to me because they knew what I spoke about. It would be so much easier for other people to refer me to other people because it was easy for them to know what I spoke about, instead of like this 9, this list, this laundry list, or this Cheesecake Factory menu list of topics that I spoke about. And I see this now so often in speakers who call me and talk to me about, getting into, being a professional speaker, is that they have so many topics. They could talk about so many things. They want to talk about so many things. It is a huge mistake, right? When you become a professional speaker, and I always say professional speaker as opposed to public speaker, if you want to become a professional speaker so that somebody can pay you, and you want to be a highly paid speaker, you've got to narrow down your topics. You really have got to narrow them down so that people know you for something. So I had these 9 topics, right? And then after I finished my coaching with my first coach, I hired another coach to help me, again, just, going to the next level of this business. Where do we need to go? What do I need to do? And I still had these 9 topics. And she was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Like, we're not doing that. That's way, way too many. And I was like, well, I don't know how I'm going to narrow this down. Like, I have these 9 topics. These are things that I can talk about. How am I ever going to narrow all of this down? And so we started to look at things that I had done, things that I had accomplished, right? And started to look at those 9 topics and see, is there a way that we can blend these things together so that we get from 9 to what we wanted to get to was a manageable 3, right? 3 topics that I could put out into the world, that this is what I'm speaking about. So what did we do to go from 9 to 3, right? And what can you do when you're thinking about your topics? And what should I speak about? If I can speak about a lot of things, what can I speak about, or what should I speak about? So we looked at a number of things, and I'm going to share some of those with you. So for me, we looked at, what is my expertise, right? So my overall expertise comes from me being a trial lawyer, an employment law trial attorney. I did a lot of work around discrimination. Well, going into the world, right, of speaking and thinking about discrimination, I didn't want to go out into the world and be a lawyer, right, talking, right? I wanted to use my legal expertise as the backdrop, as the thing that gave me authority and that would allow people to listen to me from a different lens. But I didn't want to be speaking to people from a legal perspective. So I didn't necessarily want to talk about discrimination. But what was out there in the world, there was a lot of stuff going on around unconscious bias and diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all of those things related to my expertise around being an employment law trial attorney. I decided that I did not want to go into the pool and say, I am a diversity and equity and inclusion expert, because there was a lot. There were a lot of people in that pool. I decided that I wanted to take on unconscious bias, because for me, unconscious bias is really the problem, and you have a lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion as a symptom of that unconscious bias, right? Because our unconscious biases are what cause us to make decisions that then result in there being a lack of diversity, equity, and inclusion within our organizations. And so, based on my expertise as an employment lawyer, I knew that I was an expert in unconscious bias and how that could negatively impact the workplace, and how could people then disrupt their biases and do what they, what are some of the practical things that could be done in the workplace to be able to disrupt those biases. So we narrowed down and took out some of the D&I kind of stuff that I had in my 9 topics and said, okay, we're going to focus in on unconscious bias. So there, we had one topic, right? So we looked at my expertise. We looked at what I had a degree in. We looked at, what I may have. I have had life experience, right? As a Black woman attorney, I experienced bias. I experienced discrimination. So I had all of it, right? I had lived it, done it, tried the cases, all the things around unconscious bias. So that's something that I could speak about. It is also something that I knew deep, right? I had a depth of knowledge. So when you're thinking about what are your topics, what do you have a depth of knowledge in? Not things that people can just Google, right? A depth of knowledge to the point that when somebody asks you a question like that off the wall question, you're not thrown by it, right? So that's another area that you need to look at in terms of how do I choose my topics. Now, we still had a bunch more of those 9 topics left, right? So we had to do something with those. Well, by the time I had gotten to this coach, I had already written my first book and I had already done my TEDx. So we started looking at that. Well, what was my book about? So my book, the first book that I wrote was Ace Your Workplace Investigations. It was a step-by-step guide for avoiding friction, covering your assets, and earning employee trust. It was all about how to conduct legally defensible workplace investigations, right? And how to earn your employees' trust around all of that. So I had already been training on that. I had been training on that for years, and it is what caused me to write the book. So then we just went full circle and said, okay, great. That's your next topic. Use the book. So if you've written a book, right? If you've written an in-depth paper, or you've written something where you can use that knowledge and you can train people, you can speak, make sure that you take that book. And I'm looking at IG and all the other things. So if y'all see me going back and forth, right? So if you have a book and it's something that you really want to speak about and you think that has some transformational value to others, then that's another thing that you can use to narrow down what your topic is. So now we had 2 topics. So I had unconscious bias, and then we had we had workplace investigations, how to effectively conduct workplace investigations based on my book. And then we looked at, okay, well, you've just done a TEDx, right? Which is my TEDx is actually an award-winning TEDx. We got a writing award, the Cicero Writing Award for that TEDx. So then we looked at that and we thought about, okay, can this be something that can be turned into a training, and how can you impact organizations? Well, what I realized is that after my TEDx, when I got off the stage and after everything was over, people were coming up to me sharing their stories, right, about bystander intervention and about Good Samaritan and all the things. And someone even talked to me about, this would be great to have like as a training. So I was like, okay, so as we're talking about the topics again, here we go. Here's the third topic, bystander intervention. This is something, 1, I had done a TEDx on, and 2, I had personal experience with. with my son, who was a victim of police brutality, and we had somebody who actually intervened, right, to help him. So again, there was that experience that I could use and that I could leverage, right, when I'm talking about when I'm doing the training. So there we had it. We had my 3 topics. And what was interesting is that those 9 topics that we had, we basically just folded them in. We looked at what was the common theme, and it really was about this whole around accountability, right? Whether it was doing investigations, whether it was, making sure that the decisions we were making were not impacting people negatively based on our biases, bystander intervention, being accountable and speaking up, all of them, and even the 9 topics that we had in total really had this theme around accountability. So we took all that and we distilled it down to 3. Now, when we got to those 3, we still thought about, okay, that's still a lot, right? To be going out there talking, well, I talk about this, I talk about this, I talk about this. What we then decided is that we were going to lead with 1. And the one that we decided to lead with was unconscious bias, because all the others, and all of my topics actually go together, but all the others could be folded into unconscious bias. So we decided that we would lead with 1, right? And me as an unconscious bias expert, that would, people would understand that, people would come, right? It would bring people in. And then when you're talking to potential clients, you can tell them all the other things that you speak about. And for me, because we made sure that these things really, work together, it was easy to say, yeah, we could do this, or, we could do this, right? We could also talk about this. As time has gone on, I have stopped talking about workplace investigations, right? And I now talk about courageous conversations. So in the wake of George Floyd's murder, I did a lot of work for a lot of corporations, right? Around listening sessions, around race, around discrimination, around unconscious bias, around bystander intervention. So that came to the forefront. And then also, how do people engage in courageous conversations? Because that was something that I learned from the listening sessions, that people really wanted to have these types of conversations, but they had no idea how to have the conversation. They didn't know, they didn't want to offend people. They didn't want to say the wrong thing. And actually tomorrow, I have an interview that's going to be released on ABC Memphis, where I talk about courageous conversations, right? And some of these issues, and especially going back into the workplace, what are some of the issues that are going to come up in terms of courageous conversations? But so I have now switched out. I can still speak about workplace investigations. I just choose not to, right? My book is still there. My book sells all the time on Amazon, but I have chosen not to focus on that anymore. So I still have the 3 topics that I focus on, right? So when you are looking at your topics, when you are trying to decide what topics you speak on, you see what we looked at. We looked at my experience. So life experience, expertise, my degrees, any certifications, books that I had written, my TEDx, right? Things that I really had deep knowledge around. And then there's some other things that I took some notes. Sorry. I took some notes so that I could tell you all, just to make sure that I didn't forget. So things that you're passionate about, right? But here's the thing too. Sometimes we're passionate about things, but that passion is not going to translate into somebody wanting to pay you, right? Hey, Chris. Hey, Cindy. Hey, the power of 52. But that's not necessarily going to transfer into somebody wanting to pay you. So I'm talking to you from the perspective of wanting to be a professional speaker, meaning that you want to be paid for speaking. So when you're thinking about the topics, right? If you want to be a highly paid speaker, then you need to think about your topics in that context, right? So even though you might be passionate about something, it may not be a topic that people are going to pay you for. So you got to think about that. Also think about something that you could speak about at the drop of a dime. So if somebody called you up at last minute and was like, hey, can you come on and, we need a speaker. And whatever your topic is, that's the topic that they need. Can you be ready to get up there and speak. Like I could speak about any of my topics with or without a PowerPoint presentation. You need me to go, let's go, right? But you have to be that prepared. And so when you're choosing your topics, make sure it's something that you can just talk about when you want to. Um, Cindy says, yes, that passion may not translate to sales, right? Especially, right? Because there are lots of things that we're all passionate about, right? But they don't necessarily have anything to do with money. Look at what your life experience is. Sometimes people get scared as speakers to speak about certain topics because they're like, well, I don't have a degree, right? I don't have any certifications. Well, there are lots of things in this world that we don't have degrees in. And there are things in this world that we will never be able to get degrees in, nor do we want to, right? That only life experience can teach you. And that only life experience, for example, trauma, right? Traumatic events. Life experience teaches you those things, and life experience allows you to communicate that in a way that somebody who has not had that experience cannot. It also allows you to communicate to people who have had a similar experience in a way that somebody like who doesn't have that same type of traumatic background could communicate, right? So that gives you authority, that gives you stature, that gives you a depth of knowledge that other people don't have. So don't discount your life experience. Do not discount your life experience at all when you are thinking about what the topic is that you want to speak on. I already talked about this, to have the depth of knowledge, right? So it's really about looking at yourself in your totality, right? All of who you are, all of who you've been, all of what you have experienced, right? Whether it's through formal education, informal education, or just day to day life. Take all of those things and look at them and say, what is it that you would enjoy speaking about? Because that's the other thing too, right? People see people, on stage and see speakers and they think, oh, this is glamorous and this is fun. It's hard work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to speak, especially now virtually where you have to be really, on the ball, right? Because you don't have the energy of people around you. So it is a lot of work and you need to be prepared and you need to be able to provide transformation for people. There needs to be value. So you need to think about that too when you are, when you're doing and choosing. Hey, Lisa, when you're choosing your topics, you really need to be mindful of all of those things. You don't want to just, be out there. So also when you're thinking about your topics, think about two other things I want you to think about. One is who is the consumer of the information, right? So who is it that needs to listen? Who needs to hear this? Who is it that you're trying to transform? Whose behavior are you trying to influence or impact, right? Whose lives are you trying to impact? That may be different than who's paying you. Right? So our topic may be great for the consumer. Maybe like, this is the best thing. They need to know this. I know they need to know this. However, the person who is paying you, Cindy say you're taking us to church. The person who is paying you may not be so all into that topic. They may be like, yeah, that's great. How's that going to help me? Because remember, especially if you're talking to corporations, they want to know, right, that it's going to impact their bottom line somehow, right? And it positively, right? Because if they're going to give you money, they want to know what is the transformation, what is the value, what is the exchange that they're going to get. So you have to know who the consumer is and you have to know who the payer is. Now, they might be the same, right? In certain situations, they might be the same, but oftentimes they are not, particularly when you're talking about corporate. So on LinkedIn, someone says, our audience dictates the tone, right? Right. And so you have to know who your audience is, right? And when you're deciding on your topic, if you want to be paid, if you want to be a paid speaker, then you need to know that there is a paying audience for that particular topic, right? It might be great. It might be a great story. It might be great to tell friends. It might be great to have, at some get together. but it doesn't necessarily translate into somebody wanting to pay you for that, right? So I wanted to just talk about that a little bit because I'd seen that post in a Facebook group. And I was saying at the beginning, if you missed the beginning, I was saying that I saw a post where somebody was saying that when they're, thinking about for speaking gigs, if someone calls them or if they reach out to someone, they basically ask the people, what do you want me to talk about? And then they just, if you want me to talk about that, yeah, I'll go figure that out and I'll talk about that. Don't do that. That's not going to get you paid. That's not going to get you paid. So I've been on here for a little while, so I want to jump off, but I want to invite you to a new program that I have started. And it really came out of this desire to help speakers, and particularly, I will say, particularly women speakers, because I have watched over the past couple of years as I have been on this entrepreneurial journey as a professional speaker. I've watched us not be paid. I have watched us not being given the, our just due in terms of making sure that we are respected for our brilliance and that there is an exchange of value. And that, I've seen us being asked to speak for free and to speak for exposure. And some of this is because we have not shown up, right? So some women speakers, and I'm talking about women, because that's who I'm focused on, have not shown up in a way that people will respect that they should be paid. And it's not because you don't have the goods to be paid, right? It's just because you're not positioned the right way, right? You don't know how to ask. You don't know how to set your rates, right? You don't know what your topics are. You don't know how to verbalize your transformation and the value that you're going to give to the consumers of your information, right? And so when you're not able to verbalize that transformation, people are not going to pay you because they're like, well, she can't even tell me what she's going to do for us, right? How is she going to make our lives different, or how is she going to make our employees' lives different? And so they won't pay. Some of you don't feel that you deserve to be paid, right? So that there's a mindset issue around all of this. And so, you don't even ask. You don't even ask to be paid. Some of you get so nervous that you discount your rates before they even ask you for a discount. All they have to do is be silent or tell you their budget, and all of a sudden you start to run scared, right? And these are all normal things, especially if you don't have your brand in place, if you don't have, all of your ducks in a row in terms of positioning yourself as a highly paid, sought after speaker, right? And so I have been thinking about this a lot. Women have been calling me, speakers have been calling me. I have been working with speakers and helping them to negotiate their fees, negotiating from 0 to multiple 5 figures, right? In a matter of one conversation and maybe 3 text messages, right? Around how do you do this? How do you get from them saying, I want you to speak for exposure, to getting them to multiple 5 figures? And how do I get from, always being here, there, and everywhere speaking for free to saying, no, you got to pay me, run me my money, right? So how do you get to do that? And because of all of that, because what I've seen in the speaking industry, and because we need to go get our money, right? And they need to put some respect on our name, I have launched what I call Speaker Moguls. Speaker Moguls is where we create highly paid, sought after speakers. And Speaker Moguls has 2 components to it. Speaker Moguls has the Speaker Moguls Academy, and we have what we call Bankable Brands Unleashed. Speaker Moguls Academy is where we teach you to master the business of professional speaking. If you do not treat speaking as a business, you'll never make money, right? And a lot of people, it's like a hobby. Oh, I love to speak, right? And so then when you love to speak, and then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, but I'm out here speaking, and I'm not making any money. It's hard for you to transition because it's like a hobby to you, right? So if you really want to be a highly paid, sought after speaker, you have to understand and master the business of professional speaking. You have to treat it like a business, like any other business, like you were selling any other service or product. Right. So in Speaker Moguls Academy, we will teach you the business of professional speaking. If you go to go to applytobeintheroom.com, you'll see everything laid out. So you'll see all of the modules and stuff that we're going to go through. I'm going to look over here because I have the website up. So we're going to go through your branding, your business models, your contracts, how to find your niche, frameworks, influence building, intellectual property, lead generation, marketing, media training, mindset, monetization, negotiations, pitching, presentation skills, and sales. And yes, we're going to cover all of it because we have a whole year together to do it. So inside of Speaker Moguls. So that's the academy, right? That's where we're going to focus on the business of speaking. So we will get you, we'll get you to understand what your topics are, what your why is. Why are you doing this? Who is the consumer versus who is your payer? And then the second aspect of Speaker Moguls is Bankable Brands Unleashed, where we help you to build a bankable brand strategy that gets you known and paid. You've got to have a brand. If you are a professional speaker, you have to have a brand. People have to know who you are, right? And you have to have a brand. And your brand is not your logo. It's not your colors. It's not your fonts. Your brand is a whole living, breathing thing. And what we're going to do inside of Speaker Moguls is to help you to build that using my Power Play framework. And the Power Play framework is to help you position yourself powerfully, to help you optimize your presence, win the money game, embody your brand, and then teach you how to revise as you evolve and grow, right? Because I just told you in my evolution, I've dropped one topic and substituted in another topic, right? So you have to revise and grow as you go along. So we will help you to create your entire brand strategy. No, we're not building your website. We're not making your logo. We're going to create the brand strategy that you can then give to your team to implement, right? And so they'll be able to put all of the things that we have put together in play. And the great thing about the Bankable Brands Unleashed part of it is that we will go to a mansion for 4 days here in Orlando, Florida. And you're going to have a whole brand makeover where you have your video shoot. You're going to have a photo shoot. You'll get your makeup done. We'll have a private chef, like all the things, like all the bells and whistles. It'll be an entire luxury brand, a personal branding experience. But we'll do the work before we get there so that we can implement, right, the things that we have done when we get to the mansion. And one of the great things too, at the end, when we're at the mansion, we're going to create for you what is called our 90-day strategic black print. So it's great to have all the information, but anybody who knows me, I'm all about implementation, right? So I don't just get information to get information. I get information to implement and take action. So the 90-day strategic black print is not a to-do list. So I don't want you to get confused and think, oh, it's just a to-do list. No, this is a very strategic plan that we work through, right? And what it will do for you is it will help you also to understand what are the things that I have in my mind that I want to be working on that I shouldn't be working on, right? Because there's a whole process I take you through. So you will have that. And that's something that you'll be able to use over and over again and to leverage over and over again. It will help you with execution. We don't have problems with creating goals. None of us do. We can create goals all day long. And some of us may even get to the planning stage, right? So we have a goal and we may get to the stage where we create a plan. What we have a problem with, however, is execution. We don't execute. So if you want to be in Speaker Moguls and you want to, really understand how to master the business of speaking, go to applytobeintheroom.com because we're going to take you through this whole process, right? So you'll be able to gain clarity about your why, your speaking topics, your ideal client, your paying client, most importantly, right? You're going to design your speaker brand and your business models. There are so many different business models as a speaker, right? Set your real speaker fee. So again, I have spoken to so many people, men and women speakers over the past 2 years, and I am flabbergasted, I would say, about some of the rates that you all charge, especially with as brilliant as you are, and it's time for y'all to make bank for your brilliance, right? It really is time for you to make bank for your brilliance. Lisa, thank you for putting the um I'm going to pin your comment so that they can see. It's apply to be in the room.com, apply to be in the room.com. And listen, when you it doesn't cost you any money to apply, but be serious, right? Because this is a high ticket investment in terms of being in this space. And I want to work with people who are serious. I want to work with speakers who are serious about becoming highly paid, sought after speakers. This is not for everybody, right? So if speaking is a hobby for you, like this is not for you, right? And that's okay if speaking is a hobby. It's just that this program is not going to be for you. So you'll be able to discover the strategies for your fee negotiations, know what, who, where, how to pitch, because that's a big thing, right? How do I get speaking gigs? That's another question I get asked all the time. Well, how do I get these speaking gigs? Well, come into Speaker Moguls and we will teach you how to do that. You'll be able to leverage strategies for using your proposals to close sales, right? That's something that's really important to understand. How you write your proposals, how you put them together, how you create your offers inside of your proposals is really important in order to get those sales closed. And yes, this is sales, right? We're speakers, but we are selling our services, so it does involve sales. And yes, I'm not a lover of sales either, but it's a necessity, right? It's a business. So we're selling. You'll also be able to identify and secure opportunities for increasing your authority. So, hey, Gotti, for those of you who, want to know how to write a book or want to write a book, maybe you want to publish a magazine like you see behind me. We have our Ladies Who Leverage magazine. Maybe that's something that you want to do. Do you want to do a podcast? Right? I have the Ladies Who Leverage podcast. There are so many things that we can do to increase our level of authority, right? So, we will be working on those things because just, being a speaker is great, but there's other things that you all want to do. Maybe you want to take it and now leverage that in terms of coaching or mentoring, right? Or creating a course. So what are the other things that we can do? And then inside that community, you have me, right, as your trusted advisor to be able to guide you through this entire process. So like I said, it's a 12-month program where I will work with you. So twice a month we'll meet, we'll train on topics, and then you can ask me questions, right? There'll be strategy and consultation, and we'll work through what's happening. And no matter if the topic that we're talking about this month has nothing to do with the problem you're having today, we can still talk about the problem that you're having today. And there will be a private community. So you have 24/7 access to that community where you can ask the other speaker moguls, right, what for advice, and you can give advice. And we'll have one of the things that I put in here is because and I put this piece in here in particular because this is one of the things that saved me so much time and made me money, right? As a speaker. And so what I have put into this program is what I call Voxer SOS. And that is so that if something is happening, like you're in the middle of a negotiation, or you need to get out a proposal, or you need to pitch somebody, or you need to do something is happening right this minute, and it's not happening while we are in our bi-monthly meetings, and you need help, then you can Voxer me, right? That was such a gift to me to be able to have access to my I had access to my coaches like that, right? And there were times that I was in the middle of a negotiation on the phone, right? And I'm like on my phone, but on speaker and texting my coaches like, hey, this is happening. Can you help me? Like, how, what should I do? What should I say? Right? Or being able to get off the phone with a potential client and needing to send them a proposal in the next hour, and being able to reach out to my coach to say, hey, here's what we talked about. Here's what I'm thinking. Help me to, to really put this together. And so that was such a gift to me. And that's a gift that I want to give to you all inside of Speaker Mogul, because it really helped. That was like that access alone was worth whatever I was paying for coaching. Like at any moment, just having that type of access to coaches and people who've been there and done that is worth everything. Hey, Precious, how are you, my dear? So if you are serious, if you want to be a highly paid speaker, if you are tired, and I mean tired of being underpaid or being told that you have to speak for free. As a matter of fact, I was listening to two separate YouTube videos like last night and this morning, and they were saying, yeah, when you start out, like, you have to speak for free. No, you don't. You do not. You absolutely do not. You can if you want to, right? And there are times when you will speak for free, but it should never be the expectation. It should be your decision. Now, when you start out, does it mean that you're going to start out at 5 figures, multiple 5 figures? Maybe not, right? I started out at very high 4 figures and it quickly went to 5 figures. Why? Because of my background, my experience, and all of that kind of stuff. So you could do the same, right? But it definitely does not have to be zero or a bag of chips. Like, it just does not. Precious says, yes, it's worth everything. Say that, right? That access, like, listen, y'all, when you are investing in coaches and mentors, what you are doing is saving time. Like, you're buying time. You're buying all of the time that they have spent, right, making all of the mistakes so that you don't have to do that, right? You're buying all of their expertise. And if your coach is a coach who is really interested in their own skill set, right, and continuing to level up, and somebody who's still speaking, which I would say, if you're going to have a coach who's teaching you about speaking, they should still be speaking. But what you also get is the value of what they're learning, because what they're learning, they're going to then translate to you, right? So what you're paying them, you're getting way, way, way more value, right? And so I always think about, people talk a lot about like ROI, like, what's my ROI? If I give you this money, what's my ROI? And for me, that is like, what am I getting? Right. And getting is for me, when I think about people always talking about getting, that's like a scarcity mindset. Like, what am I going to get? What am I going to be able to hold on to? Like, what can I hold? Right. As opposed to a more abundance mindset, when you're thinking about, what am I going to receive? What do I receive by being in Speaker Moguls, right? In by being in Speaker Moguls, I receive clarity, I receive access, I receive connections, right? I receive, a level of authority. What am I receiving? I receive knowledge, because there's going to be lots of experts who come into Speaker Moguls, right? So what is it that you're going to receive by being in Speaker Moguls? What are you going to receive by being in any coaching program, whether it's mine or mentoring program, whether it's mine or anybody else's? Think about it more from a receiving standpoint, because when you are open to receive, as opposed to always thinking about, what am I getting? What am I getting? What am I getting? It will be a much better experience for you, be a much more valuable experience. So if you're interested in being a highly paid, sought after speaker, you're ready to do the work, I am ready to be there to guide you, to help you. Obviously, I can give you the tools. You got to do the work, right? You got to create the transformations, right, by doing the work, right? But I will teach you what I know. I will bring in experts to help you. We are going to create this amazing experience for you inside of Speaker Moguls and with our Bankable Brands Unleashed mansion retreat that we're going to have. So all you need to do is go to applytobeintheroom.com, applytobeintheroom.com. You'll find all the information that I just talked about, because I know I speak fast. And this may be like a fire hose of information that you just got. But if you go to applytobeintheroom.com, it is all there. Everything is laid out for you, what you will receive, what's included in the programs, what's included in Speaker Moguls Academy, what's included in Bankable Brands Unleashed. Just click on it, apply, get on my calendar. Our cohort begins July 25th. So you're going to want to be in the room. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments. You could reach out to me in DM, but the easiest way to get your questions answered and one-on-one by talking to me, right, having a face-to-face conversation with me, is to complete your application. So Go to applytobeintheroom.com, applytobeintheroom.com, IG, applytobeintheroom.com, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I will be looking in my emails for your applications. All right, y'all. I hope this was helpful to you. Go figure out those topics. And if you can't, and even if you can, but now you need to make sure that you get paid for it, go to applytobeintheroom.com. I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye. Bye, IG.